Okay, it is time to get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for some of y'all if somebody's joining us from across the oceans. Welcome to Prosoft Technologies webinar on vLotto, which is a new paradigm for safe and secure remote access to your industrial control systems. A couple of things. So for everybody that have registered for this webinar, you will get a copy of this recording in approximately a week. So please watch out for that. Also, my colleague Michael is moderating the webinar. So should you have any questions, please post them in and we will pause periodically to answer the questions. Let's get started. So let me introduce myself. My name is Vishal Prakash. I am the product manager with Prosoft Technology. I've been on board for about 7 months now, and I've got over 20 years experience in the industrial remote telemetry solution sector within the oil and gas, and water, wastewater, and power, and other utilities. Okay, before we get started, let's just a couple of sentences about who Prosoft is. I'm pretty sure most of you guys have already heard about Prosoft. For those who don't know, Prosoft has been around for over 30 years. And we are your industrial connectivity experts, whether you're looking for solutions to connect dissimilar equipment within the factory floor, or whether you're looking to connect machines reliably, globally, our hardware and software solutions can help. We also enable reliable connections between your industrial data and business systems through our OPC UA solution as well. We are an application-focused company with on-site and off-site technical expertise and experts that can help you solve your problems in some of the most industrial challenging issues that you've got. So please feel free to take advantage of our technical support team. They're extremely good and well-versed in all of our products and the applications we support. Okay, so just very quickly, let's have a look at some of the applications. Our products are used in a number of different ones, whether it's to help modernize an automotive plant, whether it's to automate material handling operations, either at a giant warehouse or at a port. Our products are used. Our products are used to accurately perform gas calculations at a well pad site. And then our remote access solutions, they're used effectively to reduce downtime and support costs globally. So we're also known as the Modbus guys, as most of you guys that have heard about Prosoft, where we've got in-chassis solutions that allow us allows our key partners, Rockwell and Schneider, to enhance their product offering. Fundamentally, our in-chassis solutions look at protocol conversion and so forth. Okay, so today's discussion, what we want to talk about today is the security and safety considerations for remote connectivity to your industrial control systems. And to do that, let's start with what we know. So today we know that your industrial control systems must be secure, and that's an absolute paramount. We also know that machines must run safely, and this is very important as well. So remotely accessing the industrial control systems and machines, if it is not properly done, that can jeopardize not just the security, but also the safety of your machines as well. Okay, so even though we know the benefits of remote access, where it helps you reduce downtime and reduce your support costs, we want to make sure that it is done rightly by taking all of the safety and security considerations into place. Okay, so we're going to review all of those key points that you need to consider when you want to implement this solution for yourself. Okay, just very quickly, let's look at machine safety 101. the fundamental idea with machine safety is you want to ensure that the machine is not energized or it is operating intentionally, when you put your hand in it or walk inside of the machine. So that one there is a scene from the Elysium movie where you've got Matt Damon. He's walking into that machine, and basically you do not want that machine to start operating unintentionally. Um, because the results, if it does happen, it might seem that it kind of you look cool, but to get to that cool point, you're going to need a visit from a Dr. Chappie, and that's really not a very good thing that you want to go through. So basics, make sure that the machine does not get energized unintentionally. So having looked at that, we want to look at what steps you might want to take before you make changes to a machine when you're local. And the steps would be that you would ask permission from a supervisor or operator. You want to follow the company's lockout tagout process to make sure that you adhere to all of the safeties processes, and then you want to check all of the set points before you make any changes. Then you'd also look at the HMI, the local HMI, to look at the machine status to make sure that everything is fine before you make that change. Okay. So if you're trying to do this remotely, what steps would you take? Ideally, you would be taking the same steps. Whether you're local or whether you're remote, you want to make sure that you follow the same steps with respect to making changes on your machine. But if you are remote, and let's say the first step was to ask permission from your supervisor and operator, the sub-steps involved in that would be is to call each person whom you need to reach. You want to maintain a record of the call. You want to maintain a record of who granted permission, and then you want to get a specified window or a scheduled window where you can make those changes. Okay, and then finally, you want to ask the operator to enable remote access to the machine, so you can do that. Follow the lockout tagout process. Again, if you're trying to do this remotely, you need to call the operator and check. You want to maintain a record of the call, who granted you permission, and then again, re-verify that scheduled maintenance window. Check set points. For this, you're going to run your RS logics to view the set points. Remember, you're doing this remotely. You want to validate the machine state to make sure that it is now in a safe state to make those changes. And then finally, you're going to review the HMI. But in this case, if you're trying to do it remotely, you've got to run some kind of a remote desktop or a VNC. So you can look at the HMI screen as if you're standing in it locally to make sure that everything is fine before you proceed to making the change. So in summary, you want to consider, when you're considering the solution for remote access, you want to make sure that you have those right tools and processes to perform those steps. As we said, either locally or remotely, they should not change. But if you're trying to do it remotely, you want to make sure that you have the right tools and processes in place. So just in summary, ask permission, record results, turn on remote access, follow the lockout tagout process, check set points, and then review your HMI status. Okay. Right. Please do raise your hand if you think I'm going too fast as well. And again, Michael can interrupt me if that's a concern. All right. The next part, remote access. So we just looked at machine safety. Let's look at security 101. Your security 101 is pretty simple, and really you don't want to give access unless it's absolutely needed. The other part is when considering security, you want to ensure that you're using something called as defense in depth technique to add layers of security to the overall process. So, what types of and layers of security exist in remote access solution, which is what we're going to be looking as we go through this presentation. So the defense in-depth technique, what it says is that no single product technology or method is fully secure. The solution must address both internal and external threats, and you've got to utilize a combination of physical, procedural, and electronic means to separate your industrial automation and your control systems levels. There is a good amount of information in Wikipedia. If you actually go to that link, you can understand a bit more about not only just control system security, but also defense in depth techniques as well. Okay, so there are 5 layers to this defense in depth technique, and that is the gateway, network, internet, PC, and then finally the actual procedure, the process. So let's look at the gateway. So on the gateway that's providing you that remote access, step one, you want to make sure that you're changing the default password and to ensure that you've got a strong password that you're using. That's sort of one of the more basic things that you can do to ensure that your remote access is very secure. You want to be able to use multi-factor authentication, especially if you're going to use a cloud service for remote access. Authentication is in several forms. The Security Standards Organization, NIST 800, has come out and said, say, for example, that SMS type authentication is not the best and has been compromised. So you want to do something, a basic one is email. Perhaps a more advanced one is using, let's say, an authenticator app to provide you a one-time code that you can use on top of your username and password to access your remote access solution. You want to restrict only to outbound communications. That is, it originates from the gateway to the outside of the machine or the plant network. That this ensures that somebody that's wanting to do remote access, they're not able to loop in from the remote access point and access your enterprise network, which obviously, because that's where you've got all of your financial and IP information, that compromises your security, and you don't want that. So it's important to ensure that the solution that you're looking at only restricts to outbound communications. So use limited well-known ports. You encrypt your traffic through these ports, port 443, which is for SSL. And then you want to make sure that you separate your tunneling or your data channel from your control channel so that you can prevent unwanted access to your machine and only make sure that people who are authorized can access those machines. Additionally, the device can use a gate assigned firmware. Again, that ensures that anybody cannot download any firmware to reconfigure the device, say, as an open source device or something like that. And then, for sure, avoid using static public IP addresses. Okay. If you notice, I've kind of skipped the network part. That's because it's not that it is important. The network is very important as well. But given the time constraints today, I wanted to focus on the gateway, the internet, and the process to make sure that you've got all of those tools available when you select your remote access solution. The network itself, what we're talking about is your actual corporate network, and you want to follow your standard IT processes to make sure that the network is secure. There are a number of tools out there, tools like Tripwire, that will allow you to look at vulnerabilities in your network. And then once you have that information, you can go ahead and you can solve it. So the network itself, and this is where the IT comes in, your IT department, where they can come in and help. But you want to make sure that things like your firewalls, the network monitoring equipment that you're using, they're all safe and secure there. So let's look at the internet. You want to make sure that the application architecture is designed with security in mind. And Prosoft Connect does that. We're going to talk about it a little bit more in detail. But fundamentally, you want to make sure that the application that you're using for remote access does ensure that security is its number one consideration taken into account. You want to have multiple layers within the cloud applications where communications are encrypted between microservices. You want to ensure that your infrastructure is secured and your development is secured. This means that you're following standards like IEC, or at least you're aligned to standards like IEC 62443, which is the control systems standard. You want to ensure all of your data is encrypted. You want to ensure that deployment across different regions or even multiple clouds for resistance to things like denial of service attacks and brute force attacks. So ensuring that the application, for example, is more of a cloud native application today, really you've got these advantages built in, where because they use things like, for example, microservices and containers, the cloud service itself is extremely highly available and highly reliable. And since they are spread using the cloud architecture, you do have resistance for these denial of services or brute force attacks. And then you also want to make sure that the service provider that you're using, that their services are secure. So if you look at the major ones, whether it's AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, they're obviously all very secure themselves, which is good, but you also want to make sure that the application software that's running on these services, they're also secured. Okay, and that's why having somebody like an external security organization that's not affiliated with the actual solution provider themselves is being engaged to ensure that the service is always secure. Okay, so passwords, we spoke about that, don't share, make sure you randomize, or you can use one-time passwords. So every time you have that remote access, you're using a one-time automatically generated password to ensure that, one, you're not sharing passwords and you don't have to remember it and all of those things. Two-factor authentication, you want to use some kind of an app-based two-factor authentication that, apart from this one-time password, gives you a one-time use code that'll get you into the remote access, where then you can access your industrial control system, again, giving you that additional level of security there. Okay, you want to make sure that data is encrypted when it is being transmitted, and it should be no less than 256-bit encryption. You want to maintain, you want to ensure that the solution has got a record of all of your activity. So call an audit trail, something that's not editable, but something that can be easily accessed for future forensic review. You want to ensure that that's an integral part of the solution, the remote access solution. Okay. To ensure that the remote access solution, you also want to ensure that it is you're doing it in collaboration with the IT rather than bypassing them. And this record keeping is one where they can actually see what's happening. And so they have a good understanding of to say, what are you exactly doing coming in from the outside to access your industrial control system? Because that's as important as security. And by involving the IT department, you can ensure that the implementation of this will go down very smoothly. Okay, I skipped through the PC again, again, not because it's not important, but given the limited time that we have today, I wanted to make sure that I'm going through all of the other parts that are more important. So with PC again, fundamentally an IT function, you want to make sure that your PCs are secure, software is up to date, and you're following the IT processes and procedures in place to do that. So finally, let's look at the process. This is very, very important. When you're setting out the process for the remote access, you want to make sure that the solution allows you to seek permission, whether it's from an operator, whether it's from an IT user, or a plan engineer and end user. But you want to make sure that you've got a verifiable way where you can obtain this permission before you can engage or enable remote access. You want to record all of those results, and you want to keep that access closed, so meaning you do not want the ability to change those records once they have been recorded. And then include multiple groups within that decision when possible, so that not one person is controlling the access or the denial to the service. You can have more than one group or one person be part of that decision-making process. Okay. Any questions so far, Michael? Comments?
None that I can see. Okay,
good. Okay, so in summary, for machine safety, we want to make sure that we are asking permission, record the results and turn on the access, which means you want to be able to reach, call every person that you need to, maintain a record of that call, and then make sure that you want the operator to enable access to the machine. You want to ensure that you follow the lockout tagout process. You want to check your set points and then review the HMI status before you do anything. So these are the steps involved in your machine safety. If you look at security, in summary for that, the security has to be applied, like I said, at multiple levels. So that's, your process, the application, the device, and the network itself. It's not a one-step solution. As we spoke about the defense in depth, security has to be at multiple levels. You want to make sure you've got an audit trail for forensic review and record keeping. And then you want to make sure that the solution is evaluated by third-party security organizations, again, to ensure that the service itself is very secure and they're being proactive rather than reactive if and when there is a potential issue. If you look at the device itself that you want to consider for your remote access, you want to make sure that it supports outbound communications only. You want to make sure that it supports well-known ports like 443 with SSL, sorry, and then also data encryption with the minimum being of 256-bit encryption. And you want to make sure that you separate your tunneling in your data channel and your control channel. So you want to make sure that once you create the tunnel, then you're sending through the data and you're not using the same channels for all of that. The network, you want to make sure that we're using dedicated routers and firewalls, certainly avoid public IP addresses. And then the application itself, you want to make sure that you're using a cloud native application that with today's architecture and today's cloud services is very reliable, very available, also redundant and scalable as well. And then certainly the application, again, for authentication, you just don't want to have like a username and password, including sort of a one-time username password, but to make it more secure, you want to have things like two-factor authentication that gives you this one-time use code that you'll have to enter before you connect to the service. Okay, so this is where Prosoft comes in. So Prosoft Connect, which is obviously Prosoft's solution for safe and secure remote access. Our solution does include a concept called vLotto, or virtual lockout tagout. And again, I think almost all of our participants today would understand the process of lockout tagout very well, where when we looked at machine safety 101, we said that fundamentally lockout tagout is whereby you don't want to accidentally energize a machine. So what we've done is taken that concept and applied it virtual, when now the customers that require remote access, and again, like I said, we all know the benefits of remote access. It helps reduce downtime, it helps reduce support costs. So it's not so much a nice to have, it is a requirement in today's world. So once you have that, and you're getting that remote access service, say from your systems integrator or your machine builder, as an end user, you can now have with vLotto or the virtual lockout tagout, you can have more of a say of when they can control or when they can access your industrial control systems remotely. And you can see that they're doing it. You can have a record of when they did it, how long they were online, and so forth. Prosoft Connect is a cloud-native solution that uses microservices and containers, not just to ensure security, but also reliability, availability, and scalability. We do use SSTP and L2TP tunneling protocol. SSTP uses port number 443, which is a well-known port by the IT department, and that ensures then that they have to deal with just one port where they have to allow the tunnel and the control traffic to come through. The service does encrypt the data using 256-bit encryption. Prosoft Connect also has got two-factor authentication, which when enabled, like I said, apart from the one-time username and password, the user will have to enter a one-time generated unique code before they can actually access your industrial control system. And there is a very comprehensive audit trail of the user activity and changes. Towards the end of this presentation, I'm going to very quickly show you an online demo of a simple system that we have set up in the factory, and you can actually see the kind of audit trail that I'm talking about. Okay, so a little bit more information about vLotto, the virtual lockout tagout. Said the implementation or the access to vLotto within the Prosoft Connect solution, enables the idea is that it gives you or gives the OT departments the access that they need, and then for the IT, the control that they need. So with all of the features that's built into Connect between the two-factor authentication, the encryption using SSL for the tunneling protocol, outbound connections, and the audit log, your IT department has got all of the information that they need to understand and verify what's going on. At the same time, it gives the operations team the access that they need to ensure that they can have reduced downtime and reduce their support costs to support their control system. So how does vLotto work within Prosoft Connect? An authorized plant personnel controls when and how the machines are accessed. And again, when I do the demo, you can see a couple of steps that's involved, but basically you could have multiple people that do not have to be a Prosoft Connect user that can control or provide the permission for remote access to happen. The authorized approvers, they hold the key. They must approve each remote session. They only approve for a specific amount of time. Multiple people can be part of this process where any one person or group can provide the approval for remote access, and at the same time, any one person or group can revoke access at any time or can deny access. So even if somebody, say, is in the midst of a solution and you have a situation whereby the plant environment is changed, there's a safety or there's an emergency, you can revoke that remote access immediately to ensure that there is no further factors affecting the situation that you have in hand and that you have to deal with. Okay, so the remote users, they request access, like I said, either from individuals or from a group of people, and they have to request access for a specific period of time, usually in hours, and then provide a reasoning to say why they want the remote access. And all of this activity is then logged in detail, including the reasoning as well. So the approvers on the approvers list, they'll receive an email once request has been requested or access has been requested. Once they receive the email, then they can either, oops, too quick. They can either approve or deny, which will then state the status, change the status within Connect to say now the remote user is able to remotely access the industrial control system to do whatever change that they need to do. Okay. So again, today we know that the industrial control systems, they must be. By the way, let me pause before I get to this point. Any questions or comments, Michael?
Still nothing.
Okay, very good. So I just want to recap today's discussion. We know that industrial control systems, they must be secure. We know that machines must run safely, and we know that remotely accessing industrial control system machines, if it's not done properly, it can jeopardize not just the security, but also the safety of the industrial control system. And what we saw today was some of the factors that you need to consider, not just for machine safety, but also for security, to ensure that the solution that you select for your remote access is, like I said, not just safe, but secure as well. And for safety, we looked at the steps involved, whether you're local or remote, in how you want to go about before you make a change. And then from a security perspective, we looked at defense in depth techniques and the multiple steps involved, whether it's at a device level or at a process or at a network level, to ensure that your complete solution is very, very secure. Okay. So the vLotto that Prosoft Connect with vLotto that we spoke about does have the two-factor authentication, the encryption. It's a cloud-native solution which is going to give you that safe and secure remote access, which in turn is going to help you reduce your downtime and costs. Okay. Right. So, any questions at all from any of our attendees? Okay. So what I'm going to do now is, rather than continuing with PowerPoint, I'm actually going to bring up a demo to show you how Connect works and how simple it is, and also vLotto as well. So just give me some time. Is everybody able to see the Prosoft Connect window? And again, if you can't, please send in through the comment to make sure that I've got the right screen up and running. All right, so I'm going to start from step 1. This is Prosoft Connect. As I indicated, it is a cloud-native application, which means as a user, there is absolutely nothing you have to install on your PC. So, no master software, no client software. You don't have to install any VPN type service because we use standard Microsoft VPN technology. The idea behind that is we know IT departments keep corporate laptops or machines up to date. And if your machine is up to date, then it does not introduce any security vulnerabilities if you've got an additional piece of software that you have to install and maintain by yourself. And hence the reason why we use standard Microsoft VPN technology. Anybody can sign up for Prosoft Connect. It's pretty simple to sign up. You've got a sign up button, you enter in your details. You can then have access to Prosoft Connect. Obviously, you're going to need a gateway to actually make this very useful, play with it, and then remotely access your control system. And should you wish to do that, please contact your local RSM or your local Prosoft distributor. So right now, I've got an account that I'm going to use to log in. So there's my username. And then if I log in, I've got to enter in a password. At this point, if I've got two-factor authentication enabled, when I hit the login button, it'll ask me to enter the code. Given that this is a demo system, I don't have the two-factor authentication enabled on this. Prosoft Connect uses a concept of projects. So projects is a management tool that allows, let's say, a systems integrator or a machine builder or an OEM customer manage their customers. So if you take an example, say, as a machine builder, each project could represent a customer that they're servicing. And within each project, you could have multiple gateways. If it is a end user that's using Prosoft Connect directly, then the project could be plants, let's say, especially if it's an organization that's got multiple plants, or they've got divisions within the plant where they've got the bottling side or the packaging side, the mixing side. So each one could be its own little project with multiple gateways. So I said each project can have multiple gateways. Now, adding and configuring a gateway itself is very, very simple. You can actually configure and maintain your gateway through the Connect service. And to add a gateway to your platform, it's pretty simple. When you get the gateway from Prosoft, you take it out of the box, you power it up. It's got a built-in web server that's got some basic configuration details. And at the end of it, there is an activation code which is unique and generated for each gateway that if you enter in here, will activate the gateway within the Connect platform. Once it is within the Connect platform, like I said, you can then configure and maintain your gateway up here. The configuration of the gateway and the maintenance of the gateway is pretty simple. If you click on the gateway itself, and now these images can be changed. So if you need to put in an image of a machine or where the actual gateway is, you can certainly do that. So let's click on the gateway. You've got significant diagnostic data telling you, how long the gateway has been up and running, data sent and received on the WAN and then the LAN ports. You've got your IP information, the serial number, and then also what firmware is running on your gateway, which again, you can change remotely if you need to. You've got some basic configuration details up here where you can give it a name and a description, and then your LAN and your WAN settings that you configure. Access is where the security is. So you've got your default username and password. And remember, this is one of the things that you want to change, which we spoke about during the presentation as one of the more basic security precautions that you can take. And then we come to vLotto, which you can enable or disable. So remember, vLotto is the functionality is available. You don't have to use it, but it does offer enhanced security because now as an end user or as an OEM that you're trying to sell the remote access service to your customer, you can ask your customer to have more control in the remote access process where they can now authorize when you can connect to your machine and for how long. If the process is enabled, if vLotto is enabled, you would enter who the authorizers are, and you can have up to 3 different authorizers, or each authorizer. This can actually be a group where multiple people receive the email. Okay, so we're just going to leave it at 2. You'd have actually noticed that Connect tracks if you make any change. If I was to add an additional user up here, right now it says I made a change, but it does not allow me to apply because I do not have the details filled in. So from that perspective, Connect is not only simple to use, but it's also very, very intuitive as well. So again, if I was to discard that change, it goes back to say I've not made any changes there. Okay, then finally, this is the activity log that I was speaking about. So this is a very detailed audit trail of every activity, which you can now export and save, and then use it for future forensic review. So for example, up here, you'd notice that I requested tunnel access today at this particular time, and then it has expired, once I'd requested it, that it had expired at that particular time. So let me go back to the gateways again. This is an example of a cellular gateway. So again, if you go up here, you've got diagnostic data, including how much cellular data you've been using, and that, depending on the plan you sign up for, that's something that you can monitor there and keep track of. The actual configuration itself, your end device configuration. So our cellular gateway does support SMS functionality. And again, the functionality itself is actually controlled by automation device, whether it's via Ethernet IP or Modbus. The devices have got, we support the add-on instructions, and therefore your automation device can actually control to send out which message it sends out, and then also check any incoming messages to make sure that it's coming in from the right number with the right syntax before it can act on it. Your access, which we spoke about, the web interface, the vLotto here, it's disabled. And again, if I was going to enable it, I would go in there and enter the details, and then your detailed activity log up here. Okay, So let me go back to these gateways. I am going to show you how vLotto works in this case. So here we've enabled vLotto for this particular gateway. So right now, if I was to request access, it's going to send an email to these two people on the group. One is the demo team and the other is myself. And then let's say I put in a resign, say logic. And then if I send in the request, it says now access is pending. So I would have received an email with the permission for me to either approve or deny the service. So let's say, for example, if I was to approve, once the approval has gone through, you'll notice up here it says now I can connect, and this lock indicates that vLotto has been enabled and access expires at an hour later, which is what I requested for. So now if I hit on the connect button, it now generates a one-time username. Okay, so this is unique every time you connect to the tunnel. Obviously, this is not something you want to remember or write down, so you can very easily copy to clipboard and then initiate your VPN connection through to a tunnel server. And we've got these tunnel servers located across the globe in several regions. So we've got one in North America, South America, APAC, Europe, Australia, and there's others coming in on a as-need basis. I click on connect. Remember, at this point, this is just using standard Microsoft VPN technology. I would paste in my one-time username and then hit on the connect button, which is now establishing that connection through to my gateway. So this now gives you the indication that I'm connected. And if we look at our activity log, the actions that we just generated would all be logged. So for example, up here, tunnel request has been requested for 1 hour. Reason given is testing new logic. This person requested the user, and then I've authorized it. So tunnel access has been granted for an hour by this particular user. And then here, the indication that the tunnel server has been opened and I've connected to that particular this. Let me go back to projects. So now, as you can see there, now I'm connected. So at this point, you could typically bring up, let's say, your Studio 5000 or your Schneider Unity software, and then remotely access your automation system, and then do whatever you need to do, the changes. One thing to keep in mind is that Prosoft does not monitor the control data that you're going through. So we open the tunnel, which is secure, which is encrypted, but the data that's going through the tunnel is not something that we monitor. Okay. Now, I don't have Studio 5000 or Unity on my laptop, but what I do have is this is a demo that's sitting in our office, and I've got a little IP camera that's pointed towards it. So let me bring up the demo. Okay, very good. There it is. So as you can see, say this is a little demo that's sitting in our office. We've just got a stacking light here that we can control using SMS. So here in this case, you've got a little Rockwell PLC, and we've got both of our remote access gateways. So the wired gateway with Ethernet access, which is where we're connecting to, and then I've also got the cellular gateway on the same network, and fundamentally using that for the SMS feature demonstration. So as you can see here, there's a phone number, and I can send in some commands to either energize various lights on the stacking light. So for example, right now I've got blue that's on. So let's say, for example, if I was to send in a message to turn on the red light, I can send in a command, and once the unit receives it, it would activate on it. And because we have the logic built in to say yes, it will accept as long as the command it's received, the syntax is right. And there you can see that I've turned the red light on. It is important to remember that it is the PLC that's actually got all of the logic and the security and the control in there to to act upon the SMS message that's either being sent out or being received. The gateway, the Prosoft gateway, just acts as a router basically for the SMS message. So obviously, one of our users is sending the flashing command, which is now flashing all the lights. So whoever did that, good job. Very good. Okay. I am going to shut down this. And then to disconnect once you're finished, you can simply hit on the disconnect. That now closes the tunnel to that gateway. You notice that there we had several projects. So this is a project that I will bring up. By the way, any questions so far about how vLotto works or the simplicity of the process in yet its power? And as you could see, I said if I go back to the projects, if you look at the activity log up there, you would have seen all of the information about the vLotto, who requested permission, who granted permission, and then when the tunnel was closed and so forth. Okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to actually show you gentlemen one additional demo, and that is this guy. So this incorporates not just our remote connectivity solution, but it also incorporates Prosoft's modernization module, which is the NX2, that allows customers to do phased migration, where you've got sort of an older generation, whether it's a PLC 5, and you want to try and update to a newer technology. Our NX2 module is the way to do that, and that allows you, saves you a bunch of money where you don't have to rip and replace everything today, but it allows you to do that phased migration strategy.
Sorry to interrupt, Vishal. We got a question here.
Sure.
Can you tie into a server that has the software you need to work on the control system remotely with this product?
Can you repeat that question again, Michael?
Yeah, no problem. Can you tie into a server that has the software you need to work on the control system remotely with this product?
So they want to be able to remotely access the remote PC, basically that's got the software on it. So I think is what the user is asking.
That sounds correct. And he confirmed by saying yes.
Okay, good. So the gateways is actually to provide you a direct access point to the control system itself, to the industrial control system, and that way you don't need the local software, the local license to do it. So you can actually have the software running locally on your own PC. In this case, if you've already got a server that's got the software, the automation software on it, it would be connecting our gateway to the actual PC. And yes, you should be able to do that because we also support OpenVPN as well. So you should be able to connect to the PC to bring up the software. And but typically, if that's how you're going to do it, generally people tend to use a remote access software. There are vulnerabilities associated with it, but if you need to put the gateway connected to the PC itself, then I see no reason why you should not be able to do it. Okay, so I'm going to copy this to clipboard. Connect again, and remember this is a one-time username and password. Totally connect. Okay, so in this case, and again, because I don't have the software, I've got a little IP camera that's pointing towards my demo. Okay, so here we've got an older generation Rockwell automation controller where we've got our gateway. The camera is slightly out of focus there, but where we've got our gateway for remote access. But what we do have within this demo is actually a newer PowerFlex drive from Rockwell. And in order for the older PLC, which supports DF1 protocol, obviously, to be able to communicate to the drive, we're using our NX2 module that's able to convert from DF1 through to Ethernet IP and then vice versa, thus enabling the communications between sort of the old and the new. Also in this demo, we've actually got a Prosoft data logger module that can store up to 16 million records locally. This is very, very useful, let's say, for end customers if they're trying to fault find on a particular machine, but they don't want the data coming back to a central location. They just want the data available locally. It's useful. Customers like machine builders and systems integrators can use that for the same purpose. Or let's say, for example, if they want to record what the machine, the performance of the machine, that they can then use this data, whether to increase the efficiency of the machine, or change the process differently, or to use it for warranty claims. For any of those, the data logger module is extremely useful. Like I said, it can store 16 million records at any given time in a FIFO buffer, so first in, first out. And then these data points can then be manually accessed, retrieved and stored and analyzed as required. In this particular case, we've also got a Rockwell panel, which I have got VNC access to, where I'm able to remotely trigger and be able to start my drive. So for example, up here, I can click on it, and as you can see that the drive is running. Again, as you can see, it's pretty instantaneous. I mean, I'm going over wireless. We're then connecting through the wired network and then being able to trigger this drive. So not suggesting that you need to trigger your drive remotely, but certainly the demonstration or the power of the remote connectivity, which at least allows you to remotely connect, fault find, and do what you need to do very quickly and very efficiently. Any questions?
Don't see any right now.
Okay. So I did allow, we've got about 7 minutes left for the hour, running a little bit over, but I did allow for about 10 minutes in this for question time. So I'm now available if anybody's got any questions. Please feel free to send them in.
Yeah, let's give them a couple minutes here to see if they can come up with one. I'll let you know.
Sure. So I just want to pick up the summary slide again while we're waiting for any questions to come through. Again, we wanted to make sure that today what we discussed was we know the advantages of remote access. It helps you reduce your downtime and your support costs, but we also know that if you do not implement remote access correctly, then it can certainly jeopardize the safety and security of your machines. And to ensure to look at all of the factors that you need to consider. We looked at machine safety, we looked at security, especially with the defense in depth technique, and sort of a multi-stage process of the things you need to consider at the gateway level, your network, the actual service, and then the process to make sure that you've got all of your ducks lined in a row and ensure that your remote access service is very safe and secure. And Prosoft Connect with our vLodo, the advanced two-factor authentication, the encryption does provide you that safe and secure remote access for your industrial control system. Michael, I think we've got a couple more questions coming.
Yep. So first one, Dan Gary wants to know, when you are talking about the protocol converter, where were you noting that you could use the remote access to tie into the system to view the web page configuration tools for the converter itself?
For the if it is on the same network, so one of the things we do with our remote access is we do support layer 2 networks, which means once you're connected and all of your automation devices are on the same subnet, you don't have to create complicated routing lists. You don't have to create complicating switches or anything like that to connect your automation device. You can use like the discovery service to know which devices are on that network, and then you'd be able to easily access them. So if any of your devices are on that network and they've got a web page, you should be able to access that easily and then go ahead and do the changes that you need to do or look at the diagnostics. Does that
Excellent.
answer Dan's question?
We'll see if he types something here. He says yes, thank you. Second question, how long a VPN connection to a system through PDN ICX35 could be active if left unattended?
That's a very good question. I have left it unattended for several hours at a time. Typically, you're actually probably more reliant on the cellular connection to make sure that the cell does not drop off after a long period of inactivity or so. But I do not have with me the exact information. I'll need to check with our development team and get back to you. If you could please provide us with your contact details, then we can get back to you on that one.
Okay. And then Grant Wynn wants to know, can you set it up to access multiple subnets?
So to access multiple subnets, is this within a single connection? So you've got one access point and you've got multiple networks. The answer to that would be no. Like I said, we do support layer 2 networks. Okay, Dan has got a question there. Since you mentioned that this is layer 2, no routing, will services such as RS links allow you to hop through various PLC racks? If those PLCs are within the same subnet, yes, but not across different subnets.
I just want to add really quickly, since Rafael asked, everybody will be receiving a copy of this who registered within a week's time.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you all for attending. I hope you learned something and I hope it was very useful. As Michael said, we will make the presentation available within the next week or so, and you'll also be able to get a copy of the actual presentation itself. Thank you again, everyone, for attending the call.